please welcome the incredible Jessica Zweig.
Oh, Renee, thanks for having me, babe. We were just sitting here showing off our crystals.
I know your collection is quite extensive.
You were in my house. You saw. I had them
I did
everywhere.
see.
Yeah.
I did. I actually sat in the corner upstairs outside your office, just like taking in all the good vibes, the good energy.
That's my sacred space.
It is so cool.
Thank you.
It's almost like I didn't expect that. So funny how we met because we met at Baby Bathwater years ago. But Dan, when we were in Nashville, Dan was going to record with Lori Harder.
Yep.
And I was like, I love Lori and I wanted to meet her in real life. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just pop in for a little bit with you on this one gig. And when we walk in the front door, you're there. You're like,
This
is
is
the
my
house.
house.
Like, what's going on?
Lori rented my studio.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think it was right after Dan, it was Amy Porterfield showed up and did her thing too.
I love Amy.
That's so cool. I love how you open your doors to people. I think that says a lot about you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's in my nature. I've always loved being in community and being with people and gathering and hosting. It gives me such life. It's a big part of how I get full, And when Lori asked me to use my space, I was like, of course, bring in all the beautiful people. And I selfishly was like, I wonder who she's interviewing. I want to meet all these people. Yeah. And then you walked in and I was like, stop. And we had been, connecting on IG, and I'll never forget meeting you at Baby Bathwater. You were so beautiful and kind and warm. And then I watched your husband speak and blown away by him and his generosity. And then a few hours later, I huddled up to him next to him at the beach, drinking a cocktail. And I was like, tell me everything, Dan. And he was so generous and just awesome. Both of you are such a power couple.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel that. Okay, we're done. We're
good. That's now. The show.
I'll just put that on a loop for 30 minutes. Okay, so I know some people know of you and you have some really cool things in the works right now, but tell us a little bit about what makes Jessica Jessica.
Well, I have, been an entrepreneur my whole life. As long as I can remember, I've started 3 businesses and have walked the path of a serial entrepreneur and the insanity that comes with. And as part of that, I've had an even deeper spiritual journey, personal growth. I identify more as, frankly, a spiritual person than I do a businesswoman, even though that is the role I play in this lifetime. And I believe that your business, after being in this game for 15, 20 years, your business will only grow to the extent of which you are willing to grow as a person. And so I've been deeply committed to the path of my own work, and it's not been a straight line. Sometimes I've had to learn the same lessons over and over and over again until I finally learned them. But I started my career at 26 in Chicago. I launched an online digital magazine for the women of the city, and it took off. It was highly critically successful, but a financial failure. And after 7 years, walked away from that pretty financially desolate, had literally gone broke and tons of credit card debt. And that left a big trauma response in my body when it came to safety, and money. And then I got the insane idea to do it again, like crazy entrepreneurs do. I'm like, okay, I failed it once. I learned some things. Maybe I can apply those lessons and do this a little differently. And I decided to start my second company, and it was called the SimplyBe agency in 2017. It was essentially a personal branding, one-woman consultancy that just ended up taking off and getting more and more clients. And then I ended up hiring a team, became a full-service agency, had 30 people at my peak in less than 5 years, and was making all this money. I scaled it to a multi-7-figure business in less than a year and a half. It was wild. It was a wild rocket ship. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm finally in all of this abundance. I'm making all this money. I'm, going to revel in the success of the world telling me I'm winning with the cash and the awards and the book deal and the big sparkly office and the big team. And I loved it. And I was very much on purpose with that business. I really believe the power of authenticity and getting people online in a magnetic, unapologetic way. And we really cracked the code at SimplyBe on how to do that, which was a big reason for our continual growth. But I, as the female CEO founder, was just killing myself to keep it up. And it wasn't until about 5.5 years in, we talk about burnout, like, oh, I'm tired, I'm burnt out. Burnout can come in many forms. There's a spectrum of burnout. In 2022, I hit real physical, mental, emotional, creative, spiritual burnout and was diagnosed with situational depression. It's like I literally couldn't function. I
Never
couldn't.
even heard of that.
Yeah. I God bless my therapist, because I didn't know what was happening to me. I just thought I was really tired and was crying every day, but just felt like, okay, maybe I'm just a little sad. And her giving me that diagnosis was such a permission slip to really honestly unravel and start to heal the best that I could at the time. Because you have to remember, even though I was burnt out in the like thick of that darkness, I still had a business to run. And I was the main rainmaker. We were bootstrapped. I didn't have anything to fall back on. And if I didn't hustle, my people didn't eat. And I had this gargantuan monthly multi six figure payroll and clients, and was just on the heels of my first book launch. And I was, on stages and on podcasts and on planes and overseeing my team back at the office and making sure our clients were happy and pitching new clients to get into the door. It was crazy. And yet I just thought that was what you did as an entrepreneur. And it really wasn't until the end of that year, when I took a very fortuitous trip to Egypt, when I got on that plane to Cairo, that the burnout had turned into what I call in my new book, The Light Work, the rage against the machine called my life. I think that was what was, honestly, back to meeting you and Dan and just hearing how the two of you manage your time and structure your life so that you can live your life, was so intriguing to me, because I was so opposite of that spectrum. And the story goes, I went to Egypt and I died. I had a full-on identity death in one of the temples. A very significant experience happened to me in one of those temples that just caused me to shed this skin called Jessica Zweig, CEO of SimplyBe, playing this part. And I came back from that trip, and that's when everything changed. And I ended up getting this book deal, wrote this book in 3 months, like literally channeled through
What?
me. Yeah. I like to share that I did not hire a ghostwriter and I did not use AI. Although if you do that, there's no judgment or shame. You do you. But I wrote this book myself in 3 months, and ended up selling the company a few months later, very divinely timed. And I'm a student to this work as much as I am the teacher or the guide, but I'm really here to say to women, there is a different way to do this. There is a more innate way to do this, being in a female body, that we're playing a game, especially in the world of business, that was written by men for men. And I don't I love men. We need men. We need harmony. We need the masculine and the feminine, but we've overvalued the masculine, and have placed such a value on building and creation and constant going and action, that we have negated the values of stillness and non-doing and receptivity and surrender and allowance, that is really the healing balm to, I think, our planet, not just our businesses, but it has to start with our bodies and our psyches and our relationships and how we lead and the examples that we set as women. So I'm really here to give women a new invitation, home to themselves, and to say, we can still be wildly successful. I do really well. I just don't kill myself anymore. And I want
Mm.
to allow women into this conversation, because I know so many women. I mean, Renee, I've been on so many podcasts. I've been networking like crazy with this launch, and every woman, 9 out of 10 women I talk to, are burnt out and tired and have reached their max and are still running and are like, what did I do this for if this is how it feels?
Yeah, so interesting you share the story, because I feel like I've lived a very parallel life. Mine
Mm.
was probably 4 years earlier, but didn't have the outcome that you had.
Mm.
So when I ran my previous PR agency. We were actually in the depths of due diligence being acquired by another agency. But we were at like the peak of the growth, thinking that if we've built it up to here, it can only get better.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made a lot of assumptions. And a
Mm.
lot of things happened in the business that we didn't expect.
Mm.
But when we looked at our projections for sales versus what the earnout would have been, I said, I'm not doing this for 2 years for somebody else.
Correct.
And then we didn't take the offer. And then it wasn't a few months later, my business partner left and a bunch of things just kind of happened. And I was burning out because I went from being half responsible for the business and paying people's rent and literally feeding the team. You know this, you just said this. Also, having my babies in the same year as launching that agency. So those 2 kids. And then
Wow.
I started to doubt myself. Like, who am I to be able to run this $1 million agency? Who am I to be able to land deals in South Africa and San Diego and everywhere in between? Who am I to sign like contracts for $25K a month and fulfill those?
Yeah.
So I doubted myself, although this is what we were doing. So where there's that disconnect between I don't think I deserve this and the work that has to be done is when things become very chaotic.
Yes.
And I burnt out.
Wow.
And then I went into this probably depression, but just this season of being unmotivated. I didn't like anything. I didn't want to do anything. And in the last year and a bit, I also had a death, an ego death that really cracked me open. I went from being an atheist, like a devout atheist, to now almost completely the other side.
Wow.
Like, so the other side is beyond religion.
I get it. Same.
So I'm like, what the hell happened? What pill did I take?
Yeah, you took the red pill, or is it the blue pill?
I think it's the purple one, actually. It wasn't an option. I took it.
Same. I mean, I love that story. I love that for you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a common experience, the burnout.
But why? And so when you were talking, I was like, this is awesome. I love that you're sharing this. And now we're both on this, I don't want to say pedestal, but we are saying, women, you don't have to do that.
Yes.
And I know there's women that are thinking, but you've already accomplished it. You've already earned the reputation. You've already earned the money. So how are you now to tell me that I don't have to go through that in order to achieve the success?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. My answer to that is we are rewriting, I think, this, what I call new earth paradigm every day, like with every action, every thought, every choice that we make. And we're all in our own unique timelines as this new earth is being created. You might be on chapter 12 and I might be on chapter 25, or someone might be on chapter 102. But I think it's this conversation around burnout and being hooked into the matrix isn't something that we were necessarily having years ago. I wish that I could hear a podcast like this many years ago. I wish I could have read a book like mine, truly, like years ago, that showed me there's a different way. And it's not necessarily don't work so hard, because everyone needs to work hard to make money and to some degree grow big things. There's just no way around it. And we should be proud of that. Actually, we should revel in the fact that working hard can give us life. It doesn't necessarily have to deplete us at the same time. And I just think we're so out of our bodies. Like, we're so not embodied in the relationship to these sacred, gentle human flesh and bone vessels that are tired. And it's as simple as saying, like, it's okay to slow down for a season. It's okay to say no and draw boundaries. You don't have to take every single opportunity. You can be discerning and still win. I just had Amy Porterfield on my podcast, and she has earned $100 million in 15 years. She had $20 million year in 2023. And she said on the podcast, the exact same thing we're talking about is like, you don't have to kill yourself to do it. And she goes, I know that sounds crazy because I did that. And so why would you, listen to me? And I think if you've reached a certain precipice of success, like you, like me, like Amy, and we have gone through these dark nights of the soul, it's our responsibility to turn back around and say to women, girl, please make sure you're nurturing your body, I think it all starts with the body along the way. I didn't
Yeah.
have this information, you know? I might have still be running my agency. I don't know if I had like rested and allowed myself to take care of myself along the way. Instead it killed me. So to the woman listening, if you love your business but it's not loving you back, you've got to start loving yourself. And that's a shift I think we're all waking up to, and it's a very perplexing question, Renee, and I'm here to say full responsibility, like I did it, and there was a lot of beauty in it and it sucked at the same time, and it doesn't have to be so sucky.
It's true. We don't want it to be so sucky.
So sucky.
I interviewed a former client of mine, Elise Archer, on my show yesterday. And we were actually talking about this too, how it's like the earth cracked open and the divine feminine is oozing out.
Girl, let's talk about that. Let's
It,
go.
yeah,
It is.
because I think about my days back during my hustle agency days.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan was growing his startup and raising around. And we kept getting like, people kept labeling us the power couple or the power mom. And I identified with that label. But it also came with a lot of responsibility and pressure to maintain that type of lifestyle, the go, 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 working God knows how many hours.
Yes.
And having somebody else completely raise my kids, literally. I would see them maybe on the weekends and maybe for an hour every day. And I thought that was the payoff that you had to pay in order to achieve a level of success. And when I look back on it, I think about all the things that I was doing to stay busy that actually didn't move the needle in my business.
Yeah.
Which was like, stupid. Even today, I can think about all these things. But there was a time back from like, this was like 2012 to even just before the pandemic, when it was almost the only way to go, it seemed. I didn't know any better, or I denied knowing any better because I didn't want to give up this identity. So now we're seeing this shift and this feminine coming in and saying, wait a second, you don't need that. And if you want that, there's better ways of achieving it.
Yes.
How are you seeing this transformation yourself in the business world?
Oh, I mean, it's my biggest passion right now. And it's the only conversation I frankly want to have, you know? I mean, back to Egypt, this was a 15-day spiritual pilgrimage. It wasn't a vacation. You know, you're up at 3, 4, 5 a.m. going to these temples. These temples are alive. There's sacred records and vibrations in the walls. You have like what sounds like you're on drugs, but you're completely sober and coherent, psychedelic, physical visions, experiences. You hear things. It's insanely powerful. And at the tail end of my trip, we went to the temple of Dendera, who is the temple of Hathor, the goddess of bliss. And I was walking through her chambers. I was by myself. I put my whole body up against the wall at one point just to feel the vibration. And I got hit by white lightning. This is a true story. I got struck by what can only be described as white lightning. And my whole body started to expand. I like left this planet and I was one with the infinite. And I started hearing all of these voices. They were speaking to me in rapid succession in chorus. They were almost like, she's open. Let's tell her everything she needs to know. And I write about this in my book, this in detail, this experience. And one of the many things that they told me was that the feminine frequency, the vibration, the resonance, the energies of the feminine are returning. They've actually never left, but they've just been suppressed and written out. It's returning, and that your job as a woman is to be a leader of this feminine frequency, but it's not only up to you. It's up to all women to lead with their feminine in a new capacity. And part of what I had to do for this book, which was such a joy, frankly, was a ton of research on, goddess culture and the matriarchal societies, pre-patriarchy and Egypt and all the things. And one of the most beautiful things I've learned throughout my studies is that prior to the patriarchy, which is just the last 4,000 years of history, when things started getting written down and the establishment of church and state were formed and hierarchy and court were established, territories, land, power, control, domination. Like this was the dawn of the world we see today. Well, 4,000 years is a drop in the bucket in the history of time of humanity. Humanity's been around for hundreds of thousands of years. So what did the world look like before we could start writing it down? And I did a lot of beautiful research on that answer. And I found that we lived in a matriarchal civilization, that we were really attuned to the feminine great mother. We are on a feminine planet, and everything was an attunement to the seasons and the moon and animals, and the women were at the top of these tribes and could read what was happening in the air so that they could tell the men, okay, it's time to hunt now. We were the leaders of these civilizations and societies. And as the patriarchy formed, I won't go into too much detail on like the historical nerdiness of this all, but women were a threat. Men found our power to be inconvenient. It's when they started to rewrite out the goddess, like God is actually the goddess, and she's nowhere to be found in any patriarchal texts. And on top of that, because there was less and less and less room for us and our voices and our own seats of power, we became competitive with one another because there was scarcity at the top. And so that's been written into our programming as well. And so what I'm really here to hopefully offer with my work is an invitation back to our innate true role in the world as women. We were designed to lead. And I think to myself all the time, like, what if women were running all the countries? What if women were running all of the mass corporations? What if women were running, I don't know, the pharma industry, the big food industry, the media industry? I'm just going to say it, Renee. Like, what if women were at the top? We would live in a different world. Not to say that all women are perfect and we don't have shadow and light, but this is what I'm here for. I believe that we're here to heal what's going on in this world within ourselves, within our bodies, within our teams, within our businesses, within our families, within our communities, and to really recognize the responsibility that we have. It's so much bigger than we think it is. And to take it on. Like, this is the time. And we can do it differently. We can restore, we can reclaim. And that's the title of my book, The Light Work, Reclaim Your Feminine Power. And
yes. So I'm reading a book called Sacred Women by Queen Afua.
Amazing.
And in the book, she talks about, she's African, and she talks about how there's a lot of rich history out of Egypt. As you said, this is weird. I'm reading this stuff this week. So, God's like,
yeah.
And
design.
How she's saying a lot of the stories, the places, the experiences that have shifted the world have been rewritten, as in renamed, relabeled.
Yes.
Have been essentially added a patriarchal sway to it, because that was threatening to them. And even reading the book by Celeste Larson about healing the witch wound, how back in the burning times.
Yes, I read about that.
The burning times, what a crazy time that was. That these were just women that were helping, as an example, other women deliver babies, because who knows better than a woman who's been through it before? But women were not allowed to do that.
No,
the doctors were the ones that were to do that. So the doctors, which were all men, were coming in and saying, no, get away. You're a witch. You can't possibly know how to deliver a baby. That's my job.
Yes.
And so any woman that was a midwife or a doula or helping a woman heal with herbs and like plant medicine were deemed witches. And now in our society, witches are bad. But back even 500, 700 years ago, witches were good.
Yes.
They were helping people heal.
They were burned. Millions of women died during, I think, between like 1400 and 1600. And these women kind of date back to the roots of those matriarchal societies that were attuned with Mother Earth and studied nature and used herbs and plants and connected to the animals and became the midwives, and they knew how to heal, birth pains and help deliver baby. All of those women, they were the original, leaders. They had the codes. They understood how this place worked. And those women weren't empowered to rise to seats of power. They were a threat. And that witch wound is real. Like, we have suppressed that and have been reprogrammed over that to have actually forgotten that's who we are. And there's this deeply embedded programming to fear that part of ourselves and to suppress that part of ourselves. And I'm so grateful for this now moment. I love to hear that you were once an atheist and now on the other side of the spectrum. Like, we're waking up. Like, this is a mass collective consciousness awakening that we are a part of right now. And we have books like the ones you're reading, and you're listening to podcasts like this and hearing conversations like this. Our parents didn't have these tools. Their parents' parents didn't have these tools. Their parents' parents' parents didn't have these tools. This is now being remembered. And back to Egypt, I mean, that was the word. Like, it was like, I remembered all of it. Like, I remembered who I am and the role that I am really here to play. It's not to run a marketing agency. It's to like rise as a woman and to do it in community with other women.
Yeah. Like, bring back the village.
Bring back the village.
When was it prescribed that a woman today was not only expected to contribute financially 50-50, but also be the one that does everything in raising the children?
Yeah.
Where in history was that even possible? And then there's women that are trying to fill all those roles and burning out, getting diseases and dying, literally dying.
Right. No, it's killing us. This expectation to operate outside of our true innate nature. And it's a pretty radical thing for a lot of women, I think, to really reclaim that, like, to hold such sacred boundaries, to slow down, to prioritize themselves, to align to what feels true and true to them alone, when we've been, again, conditioned to go to college, get a good degree, go get a great job, stack your resume, start the business, make the money, have the family, raise the kids, like, play this part. Where are we in all of it? Like, what do we really truly want? What feels good in our bodies? And that goes back to, again, the story of my book. And I say it very much out loud. And it's to your question you asked earlier, like, how can we tell women to do this when we didn't do this? Yeah. And it's like, well, we didn't know to do this. We didn't know better. We have had to come to it on our own journey and our own realizations. And it really, I think the more women that are coming forward and talking about it out loud, to say, like, this is not it. Like, we can do it differently, and we are empowered to do it differently, is, I think, the biggest leap. And I'm not a mom. I really admire all moms. You guys are the heroes of the world. And to balance it all, we're not set up in a society unless you create it and write it for yourself to have it all. It feels impossible.
It is tough. Man, I highlighted my day yesterday. When I actually look back at it, I laugh. It started with a fist fight with my boys, which resulted in a massive nosebleed.
Oh, God.
And Noah actually feeling a little lightheaded. So I got kind of concerned. To all the things in between, to forcing my son, who was very sick for 3 days, to go to his grade 6 graduation, and then bringing him home only to bring him to the doctor to find out he has strep throat. He's on all these meds. Like, all these things were happening. And luckily for me, my days are set up where if I need to move things around, they can get moved around. And that's really the reason why I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But then you have to, on some level, make up for that lost time. Like, I'm still in the agency space of pitching and following up when it comes to PR. Yeah. So last night at 6:30 p.m., which isn't late to most people, but when you're somebody who gets up at 4:30, that is like 3 hours. So think about it. It would probably be the equivalent to 9:30 someone's time.
Yeah.
And I did have these moments of sitting here thinking, my kid is still sick downstairs and still wants mommy. And I'm up here pitching. So, like, part of this radical reinvention on my part is also the types of conversations I'm having with women on the show. But and also reflecting on the work that I really want to do, because I started to get back into the part of my business that was very familiar, that made money easily.
Yeah.
And that meant servicing a demographic of people that I'm just not called to serve. And it's not out of disrespect. These are men in the tech world, the opposite of women healers.
Yeah. I get it.
So it's really just fine tuning the things. Like I literally just wrote a list of things I don't like to do in my business, things I love to do.
Beautiful.
And I'm scrapping the things I don't like to do. It's not hard. And guess what? When you create that space, there's a fear. Oh, I fired a client. How am I going to get that revenue? If you genuinely believe with conviction in the work you do,
Yes.
the right person comes in and takes that spot.
Always.
That's abundance.
It's an abundance. Yes. That's an abundance mindset. And that's truly trust and safety. I feel like in the body, I just keeps coming back to the body. I have a whole chapter in my book about money called Rewiring Your Abundance Codes. And, we learn about money manifestation in our minds through the power of affirmations and visualization and rewiring our neuroplasticity. It's all like mental. I'm super here for that movement. Like, let's manifest all the things all day long. But I believe that's the content, not the context, that we have to truly have a sense of safety in our physical bodies to receive money, to trust that it's coming, to allow that it's coming, to allow for it to flow through us. As we receive it, we give it. And so what you were just saying to me is exactly the principles that I spoke about in my book. It's called the 8 Divine Feminine Embodiments of Wealth. And trust is one of them. Knowing that if a door closes, whether you close it or someone else closes it, window is going to open. And it's like the flex of the human experience is to trust. And it's hard, but it's practice. And you are always going to be provided for. Like you just are.
Baby. Yes. Because the universe always has your back, as Gabby Bernstein will say.
It does.
I remember going through those moments of trials and tribulations while coming out of being an atheist. And when I would get a little win or a little deposit of something, I would turn up to the sky and say, thank you.
Yes.
And in those same moments when I was faced with adversity and thinking, oh, I have an opportunity to throw in the towel now and just call it quits, I would also turn to the sky and ask, what is the lesson in this? Because it'll come.
Yes.
And I can't be angry at anybody or anything because of it. It is all part of the experience and the journey. It's almost like the rite of passage.
Yes. Yeah.
And it can be beautiful. Even though you're in it, you're like, this is not beautiful.
I know.
Bloody noses is not beautiful.
But it's life and it's the human experience. And we all go through these portals of darkness. And that's really truly where you find your light. I say that my book is, well, it's titled The Light Work. It's actually a book about the dark. It's about all the dark, heavy, heartbreak, painful, shameful failures, etc., that I've been through. And to really go in, not around, is the light worker's path. Like, this isn't about spiritual bypass. Like, this human experience is challenging. Like, we came here to suffer to some degree so that our souls can evolve and we learn and we grow and we become wiser. We become more compassionate. We become more authentic when we're up against these real life things. And if we accept the assignment to really do our work, we can change the world. I really believe that. We can heal the world. It starts with us.
So how in the heck did you write a book in 3 months?
It's a great question. I came back from Egypt. I was cracked so wide open. Like, I can't truly put into words how that trip changed me. I came back a different person. And if I'm going to be totally transparent, like insider baseball, my publisher was like, when do you want the book to come out? It's often they have a set date for you based on their publishing editorial schedule. And I said to my publisher, I want this to come out in summer of 2024. And he was like, no problem. You just need to get it in 3.5 months then. So I'm like a Virgo rising, like type A, kind of like I don't fall down. I don't miss deadlines. Like, I'm very, very, like, if I set a goal, I typically accomplish it. It's kind of a shadow and a light side.
Yeah.
And I just set aside weekends. I was fortunate enough while I was running my agency, I had a full team, an integrator. I took a month-long sabbatical. I went to Costa Rica to finish the book. And so those like technical things were in place, but like from a higher place, I channeled this book. Like I almost go back and read it and I'm like, I wrote that. I said that. Where did that come from? My friend Kate Northrup, who maybe you're familiar with.
She was on this show. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Kate. She had me on her podcast and she was like, she read my book. She's like, this sounds like a transmission. This book felt like a channeled book. And I really believe that it came from her. Like I'm looking up, like my higher self wrote this book. I was just the vessel and it poured through me. And I'm just so lit up by it. Like I feel like this message is so important. I feel like it's my true message in the world, this book. And it just came through. And, you know, I love writing. My art is writing. Like that's what if I could write books for a living for real and like make money for real doing it, like, 'cause there's no money in being an author. Like you make money on
there is.
the other things.
There's not from selling the book.
No one gets rich from being an author.
This morning said to me, do you know why people write books? It's so that people can hire them to talk to them about the book.
Yeah.
It's like, yep, that's it.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant and true. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. I think sometimes I'll go back to mostly my solo episodes on the podcast because it took me forever to build up the courage to do it. And I've been doing an interview and a solo episode on my podcast now for, I would say, a year and a half, 2 years now. And I'll listen to those episodes and I'm like, that sounds like me, but I said that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I knew that.
I know, right? We channel. We're open. When we're in flow, things come through us from higher dimensions.
Yep. If you allow it, it's almost like it's part of the process to achieve that too.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's in front of you. We have so much what they call the mitote. The mitote is like that fog that blinds you to actually see your reflection. You don't get to see the reality because you allow things to fog your vision.
Yeah.
And you have to just get rid of that fog.
Yeah.
Okay. So where can people go and get your book?
They can go to thelightworkbook.com, thelightworkbook.com. When you purchase the book there, I send you a whole bunch of bonuses. I'm hosting a huge live virtual global summit virtual event on August 8th to celebrate the book with Michael Beckwith, Koya Webb, Danielle Page. It's on Lionsgate, which is August 8th, 8/8, and it's 2024. So it's 8/8/8. So very auspicious day. For manifestation, intention setting. I would love for your community to come out for it. But you can buy the book wherever books are sold. But if you go to thelightworkbook.com and you purchase it there, you get a whole bunch of extra goodies. So why not?
I love it. Okay. So I have actually one last question for you before that last question is probably the most important question is when I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
As a woman who has remembered who the fuck she is, who is living out loud, taking up space, committing to her own joy, following her purpose, alchemizing her darkness and self-limiting beliefs into the light so she can become whole, who is really taking up space and living life on her own terms and unafraid to shine, knowing that when she does that, she gives other women the permission to be wild too.
Okay. So people want to go online to find you. Where can they go?
They can go to jessicazweig.com. That's my website. They can find me on Instagram at Jessica Zweig. I spend a lot of time there. I have a podcast too called The Spiritual Hustler. And just come find me and say hi.
Yay. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Renee. I was so excited for this.